with light winds.
It will be a breezy start across northwest Scotland with some patchy rain also. Elsewhere, it will be drier, though, with some bright or sunny spells, especially in the east.
Northern Ireland. A mostly dry start, though there may be some patchy rain in the west for a time. Elsewhere, dry and cloudy with limited brightness. Mostly dry but cloudy throughout this afternoon. Right across the whole country. Patchy rain in the far northwest will ease. And that is how the weather's shaping up for the rest of this Monday, the 24th of January. Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Muroki. We're on your TV and on your radio, here all the way through until midday, with an absolutely massive show to kickstart your week.
Yes, and make sure you get in touch with your views, as usual, GB Views at gbnews.uk, and we'll be getting to those throughout the programme. But first, it's time for the latest news.
Good morning, it's 1 minute past 10. I'm Rosie Wright here in the GB News newsroom. Let's get you up to date. The Prime Minister has asked the Cabinet to conduct an inquiry into allegations made by an MP that she lost her job because of her faith. Nusrat Ghani claims she was sacked as a junior minister because of concerns about her Muslimness. Ms Ghani has welcomed the investigation but stressed the inquiry must include all that was said in Downing Street and by the whip. Well, the Labour Party chair, Annalise Dodds, told us at GB News that the government have to take her claims seriously.
And when overall is this government going to start taking Islamophobia seriously? We've seen Islamophobic hate crimes really disturbingly increasing substantially over recent months. We need a government that gets a grip on this, just as on everything else. And of course, this is a government in chaos that seems to be incapable of taking decisions.
The Prime Minister is braced for the publication of Sue Gray's report into allegations of Downing Street parties during lockdown. The findings of the investigation are expected to be released this week. The Education Secretary, Nadhim Zahawi, says the findings will be completely open to the public and that Boris Johnson has pledged to face scrutiny in Parliament.
He's human. He makes mistakes. He made a mistake on this issue and he came to Parliament and actually said, sorry, but we've had the apology. We now need the detail, which is why the Sue Gray investigation is important. She will make her findings completely public, and that's the right thing. And the Prime Minister has then absolutely pledged to come to Parliament, make a statement, and be scrutinised on those findings.
The Foreign Office says some British staff and dependents are being withdrawn from the embassy in Ukraine in response to the growing threat from Russia. It comes after the US ordered the families of American staff at the US embassy to leave the country. Well, Russia has over 100,000 troops at its border with Ukraine, but denies it's planning an invasion. The Liverpool taxi bomber Ahmed al-Swiman's asylum claim was rejected 6 years before his attack. Newly obtained court documents showed the Iraqi-born 32-year-old also falsely claimed to be of Syrian heritage in his applications. He died when his homemade bomb detonated in a taxi outside Liverpool Women's Hospital last November. Activists are planning a national day of action and protest against the expansion of HS2 to Manchester. In a bill that's set to be approved in Parliament today, Phase 2B of the network will see travel times between Manchester and London cut by around 55 minutes. Will Stop HS2 North and HS2 Rebellion, though, want to raise awareness of the environmental and financial impact of the rail line. A review in 2019 suggested the project would cost over £110 billion. 1 in 3 people in Scotland have said they can't afford their energy bills. A YouGov poll reveals almost 400,000 people say their homes are currently hard to heat. The country's energy price cap is expected to rise in April, and there are concerns that bills could go up by as much as 50%. Now, new changes to the highway code, due to come into effect at the end of this week, are dangerous, according to some campaigners. Well, the updated advice includes things like encouraging cyclists to ride in the middle of the road, and it's going to give drivers more responsibility to watch out for cyclists and pedestrians. The Alliance of British Drivers says there's also a lack of plan to notify road users of the changes. Well, pending parliamentary approval, the new advice will come into effect this Saturday. John Lewis has told staff they will get full sick pay regardless of their COVID vaccination status. Executive Director Andrew Murphy says the company casts no judgment and that it wouldn't be right to create a link between staff members' vaccine choice and the pay they receive. Other retailers like Next have reduced its sick pay for unvaccinated staff, and Morrisons and IKEA have introduced similar policies. The French fashion designer Thierry Mugler has died aged 73. He was known for his daring designs featuring broad shoulders and plunging necklines in the 1980s. Well, Beyoncé, Lady Gaga, David Bowie all wore his clothes. A statement on his official Facebook page confirmed he died yesterday. You are up to date here on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now back to the point.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Muroki, and Patrick Christys on your TV and radio until midday. So here's what we've got for you today.
Yes, loads on this morning. So just this morning, we've learned that the Prime Minister has ordered a Cabinet Office inquiry into claims made by MP Nusrat Ghani that she was sacked as a minister because of being a Muslim. We'll be joined by the chief political commentator for The Independent to look ahead for what happens next, basically, really, because it's going to get a bit heavy, I think.
Yes, and a group of 30 Conservative MPs have written a letter to the Prime Minister outlining their concerns that plans to ban transgender conversion therapy will criminalise therapists who are helping children with gender dysphoria. We'll be joined by a church leader to help us pick through that minefield.
Well, it is indeed a minefield, isn't it? But anyway, it's come to light this morning as well that the Liverpool taxi bomber's asylum claim was dismissed nearly 7 years before he carried out the attack on Remembrance Sunday last year. Well, later, Mercy actually will be giving you her candid view on this particular matter, and we'll get the insights as well of a terrorism and security expert.
Yes, I will, and we've got all of that coming up and much more across the programme. And get in touch, as I said earlier, with your views, gbviews at gbnews.uk. But first, Patrick gives his views on mandatory jabs for NHS staff.
We can't afford to sack unvaccinated NHS staff. By March 31st, a whopping 6% of the NHS workforce will be dismissed. That amounts to around 80,000 people. All frontline staff are required to have both doses of the COVID jab by April the 1st, meaning that by February the 3rd, the first jab must have been given. OK, look, maybe you think these people should just get the COVID vaccine. Maybe you think they're silly for not doing so. But how do you feel about being desperately ill and there not being someone available to treat you? I find it amazing that people who don't mind being treated by an unvaccinated doctor at the start of this pandemic and right at the very height of the pandemic as well, all of a sudden now think these people pose a huge risk. If you think about it, anyone who's spent the last 18 months working in a hospital has probably had COVID at least twice. They're likely to have antibodies seeping out of every single pore, aren't they? And even if they had the jab, they could still get COVID and they could still give it to you. Isn't it astonishing how many people have a blue heart in their Twitter bio? How many of the same people went outside and just clapped for our NHS staff, who demanded better pay for nurses, who thought our medical professionals were the unsung heroes? Well, now they're absolutely fine with them being sacked for not getting the COVID vaccine. There's a bit of hypocrisy there, isn't there, I think? Tens of thousands of NHS workers were clapped and now they'll be sacked. Look, I completely understand if you think that they should just get the jab. But is it actually the be-all and the end-all? Isn't it amazing that the same people who were telling us the NHS is at breaking point, it's on its knees, it's in crisis, they're also demanding that those dangerous vaccine refuseniks lose their jobs? Well, I'm sorry, but you can't have it both ways. You can't keep complaining about there being an NHS staff shortage. We couldn't fill the Nightingale hospitals because we didn't have enough staff. We haven't got enough nurses because we don't pay them enough. Since Brexit, no one wants to come here and work in our beloved NHS. And then say that you're perfectly happy with 80,000 NHS workers being sacked. The chances are that if someone has not yet had the COVID jab, especially someone who works in the NHS, then they're just not going to get it, right? You might think they've made the wrong decision. That's absolutely fair enough, right? But it's bodily autonomy at the end of the day. The NHS waiting list is set to hit 12 million by 2025. People are already dying in ambulances outside hospitals because there isn't room for them inside, because the amount of staff needed to treat them simply doesn't exist. In some cases, people are being told not to call an ambulance, rather, they should book a taxi. We have a care home staff shortage. We have a recruitment crisis in the NHS. Can we, as a nation, really afford to just ditch 80,000 NHS workers? And people will say, well, they're not all doctors and nurses. Yeah, fine, that's true. But if there isn't a cleaner on your ward or receptionist, etc., that's still an issue, isn't it? If I was sick, personally, I couldn't care less about the vaccine status of the person making me better. People who think those NHS staff who haven't had the jab are being selfish, I'd ask this: how selfish are you? You want them to be sacked. You want there to be fewer doctors and nurses, so when somebody else's relative gets ill, they might not be able to get treatment. That's pretty selfish if you ask me.
Yeah, I'm not. I agree with you. I care, I think, more about whether somebody has COVID or not, rather than whether they're jabbed, because that ultimately is the point, isn't it? So for me, if somebody's treating me, if I go into hospital and I'm being treated by a nurse or a doctor or just encountering workers in hospital, all I care about is, do you have COVID, yes or no? Then that surely is the bottom line. So I don't see how testing regularly, and if that means unvaccinated people have to be subjected to a more stringent testing regime, then fine. But I just don't see how they can afford at all, the government, to kick out all those workers, as you mentioned.
I mean, look, hey, I've been jabbed, right? I've been jabbed twice, believe it or not. And that was a decision that I personally made, right? OK? Well, look, do I personally give a stuff about whether or not the nurse or the doctor or whoever who is treating me, or an elderly relative if they've had a stroke or a heart attack, has been vaccinated? No. I don't really care, right? I don't really care. And I think if you're in hospital, I would care more if the vaccine was like, which I think is a great thing, by the way, don't get me wrong, but if the vaccine was, 100% in terms of you can't get COVID and pass it on. But actually, that's not where we are, is it? So really, why should you massively, massively care if your doctor has had the jab? Anyway, there you go.
Well, let's speak to a doctor, Dr. Tony Hinton, who's a retired NHS surgeon with over 30 years' experience. And he joins us now. Good morning. First of all, you were at the protest this weekend. What's the feeling on the ground?
I was at the protest. Can I just address a couple of points to NHS staff and care home staff that at the moment are going through a very worrying time about their jobs and paying for their mortgage and their bills? There are a couple of places they can go to get information. If they type into their web browser togetherdeclaration.org, or if they type in NHS 100K, if I just move up slightly, you'll see my purple badge. ribbon. And that is showing support for these staff that are making their own bodily choice. And you may, at your own hospital today, at 1 o'clock lunchtime, at the main entrance, be able to meet someone that is wearing one of these purple ribbons that you can talk to and get information.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. Well, look, hey, what would you say to people? I'm just playing devil's advocate here, by the way, but what would you say to people who go, hang on a minute, look, you're being selfish if you don't get the jab. You treat people on a daily basis, very ill people, the elderly. Why don't you just shut up and get vaccinated?
There is lots and lots of research evidence now coming in, even forgetting the moral and ethical questions. There was a large study carried out at Cambridge that was reported in the last few weeks that actually shows patients that catch COVID in hospital catch it from other patients, not from staff. And when you think about it, that is very logical, because the people in hospital that are ill with COVID and have symptoms and are spreading the virus are the patients that have been brought in suffering with COVID. Any staff that feel ill are at home and they're being regularly tested. So your chance of catching it for a member of staff is almost zero. So it makes no sense. The other thing that makes no sense is I was speaking to lots of people at the march on Saturday, and very few people realise that this mandate for these jabs only applies in England. It does not apply in Scotland, Wales, or Northern Ireland. So what is the science of that? Is it a different virus in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland? It just makes no logical scientific sense whatsoever.
Do you think we're almost just sort of wasting time talking about this and almost debating whether the government will go ahead with this? Surely they cannot possibly go ahead with this and sack tens of thousands of NHS workers. 80,000 as it stands. Do you think they'll actually go through with it? There's talk at the moment of delaying that deadline for getting double jabbed, but surely they'll just scrap it altogether. What do you think?
There was talk of delaying the deadline, but on the excuse of allowing staff to get the booster jab. Now, I'm the same as Patrick. I've had 2 of these jabs. I had them because I was told initially it would protect my patients, and it was one of our 15 million jabs to freedom. That's why I took those 2 doses. And I feel that I've been misled. I'm not taking a booster. I don't need a booster. So if the booster comes in, there won't be 80,000 staff that may be potentially going. It could be 3 times that number, because many of the people that I speak to have had their 2 jabs but do not want to take a booster.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point, actually. And it's been, well, actually not reported, I don't think, until now, which is that if you constantly change the definition of what it means to be fully vaccinated, so if it ends up being 3, I mean, it'll be 4 in 6 months' time, presumably, and 5 a year later. If you need to be fully vaccinated to work in our NHS, it's not just about whether or not we lose the people who've not had the jabs now, is it? It's about people who decide, like you, maybe, they don't want a booster, they don't want a 4th, they don't want a 5th. And actually, hang on a minute, we could be losing, like you said there, 3 or 4 times the amount of people that we're already talking about.
I think it's very dangerous. Basically, what the government are trying to do is there are some things in this pandemic they've got right. There are lots of things that they've got wrong. And they are trying to blame unvaccinated people for the things that they have got wrong. And that is very dangerous. That takes us back to the sorts of things that happened in various countries back in the 1930s. We do not want to go back to that. Vaccinated people and unvaccinated people all came together on this march on Saturday. It was not an anti-vax march in any way. Probably half of the people there were vaccinated to some extent. It was against the mandatory nature. And if you allow the government to decide what vaccinations you have to have, what else can they decide? Could they decide, for instance, that everyone that has 2 healthy kidneys has to allow one to be removed to give to someone who is on the waiting list for a kidney transplant?
I mean, look, does it feel to you like, you know, it's all very well and good, we went outside, we clapped for NHS, didn't we? Goodness gracious me, these lifesavers, these people. And now, does it not feel like the government's just turning its back on NHS staff? They were clapped and now they're going to be sacked.
The government is using them as a scapegoat. I suspect what will happen is that they will drop this mandate. But I also think they will vacillate about it for so long that many people will leave anyway. I've already had one call this morning from a consultant who, although they were close to retirement, was going to continue in the NHS on a part-time basis. A very experienced doctor, very valuable to the NHS. They have already made the decision that whatever happens now with these mandates, they feel they've been treated so badly by the government, they're just going to retire. We can't afford that in our NHS.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Tony Hinton, thanks for joining us. Good words to leave it on. We definitely cannot afford to lose all those people, and that's why I think the government will not go ahead with it. But after the break, we'll be bringing you the latest on the infighting in the Tory party, from Islamophobia claims against the government by one of its own MPs to Sue Gray's forthcoming Partygate report. That's all after the weather.
Well, zooming into southwest England, and a frost-free start, though rather grey and cloudy. Best chance of bright or sunny spells across North Devon. It'll be remaining dry with light winds.
Here's southeast England and East Anglia. It'll be a widely cloudy but dry day, feeling cold with a high around 5 degrees Celsius. Across Wales, a generally cloudy day and remaining dry, though there is a chance of some bright spells on high ground.
Over to the Midlands now, and it will be a grey and gloomy day with plenty of cloud around, feeling cold under those cloudy skies with a top temperature of just 5 Celsius.
Crossing the Pennines into the northeast, and the cloudy theme continues, though there is a chance of some bright spells to high ground, remaining dry with light winds.
It will be a breezy start across northwest Scotland with some patchy rain also. Elsewhere, it will be drier, though, with some bright or sunny spells, especially in the east.
Northern Ireland, a mostly dry start, though there may be some patchy rain in the west for a time. Elsewhere, dry and cloudy with limited brightness, mostly dry but cloudy throughout this afternoon. Right across the whole country. Patchy rain in the far northwest will ease, and that is how the weather's shaping up for the rest of this Monday, the 24th of January. Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Morning, everyone. Happy Monday. It is 10:22. This is To The Point. I'm Patrick Christys. She's Mercy Muroki, and we're here all the way through until midday on your TV and radio.
Yes, now, senior civil servant Sue Gray will publish the findings of her report after the lengthy, in-depth investigation into the Downing Street Partygate. Today, she's set to interview former aide to the Prime Minister Dominic Cummings after collecting the swipe cards of Downing Street staff over the weekend.
Yeah, well, speaking with the BBC's Sophie Roworth on Sunday morning, Dominic Raab refused to confirm whether the report will be published in full. But, talking to GBNews this morning, Labour Chair Annalise Dodds said that the Prime Minister should have just come clean in the first place.
The Prime Minister himself could have set the record straight without needing even this internal probe if he just said what he did and where he was. I think most people watching this don't need a huge investigation in order to reveal what they were doing during that first lockdown. They can remember themselves, and quite frankly, I'm sure the Prime Minister can as well.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has asked the Cabinet Office to conduct an inquiry into Nusrat Ghani's racism claims. The Tory MP claims she was sacked as a minister after being told by Chief Whip her Muslimness was an issue. So not racism claims, Islamophobia claims. That made colleagues uncomfortable. That's what she alleges the Chief Whip, Mark Spencer, says. He denies the claims, calling them completely false and defamatory.
Yes, he does indeed. It's worthwhile actually checking out his Twitter page because he does get stuck right into that, doesn't he? But I believe now we're joined by John Rentoul, who is chief political commentator for The Independent and indeed an institution in his own right. John, how are you?
Good morning. Thank you very much, Patrick.
You know what? To be honest with you, I want to start with this Islamophobia stuff, to be honest, because, look, obviously Mark Spencer's issued a pretty staunch denial, clearly. And I think, really, the big question for me is, well, if any of this is true, why didn't she necessarily go through all of the proper channels? Or, why now? What's your take on it, John?
Well, I don't know, but she said that the reason she didn't make a formal complaint was because she was told that the Conservative Party would destroy her career if she did. It's a very murky story. There's no reason to disbelieve her. Equally, it sounds incredibly unwise for Mark Spencer, the Chief Whip, to have said what he is alleged to have said. I don't know why Boris Johnson sacked her as a minister, and we need to find out. We need to find out more. Basically, I can't help you any further.
But how does this, I suppose we will find out more as time goes on about this particular incident, but how does this bode more generally in terms of the Islamophobia allegations the Conservative Party has had previously? Because they did conduct an investigation into previous allegations of widespread widespread Islamophobia in the Conservative Party. Do you think this will have any bearing on all of that?
Yes, clearly. I mean, there are more than one Muslim cabinet ministers. And they will no doubt press to pursue this. And Boris Johnson has been in trouble over some of his comments about the burqa and so on. So it is a very, very much a live issue in the Conservative Party, and it is going to cause the Prime Minister even further problems if he's still there.
Do you honestly really think that someone will have sat down, in this day and age, right, would have sat someone down, right, and said, your Muslimness is an issue, when there are Muslim cabinet ministers, as you've said, there's plenty of Muslims who are members of the Conservative Party, and frankly, that's out-and-out racism. Do you really think that's possibly happened?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's extraordinary. Yes, you're right. I think it would be a remarkable thing for Mark Spencer to have done, and as you say, he denies it. But there's no accounting for what politicians sometimes say in private.
Well, there isn't.
Moving on to what we mentioned as well a bit earlier, that Sue Gray report is set to be released maybe sometime this week, at the end of this week or next week. How do you think this will change the state of play for the Prime Minister, depending on what this report says? I'm assuming it will say that there was some rule breaking that did take place. But do you think the release of the report could change anything significantly for Boris Johnson?
Oh, yeah. I think it could be the end of his time as Prime Minister. I mean, not immediately. I did notice, Dominic Raab was asked if he would be Prime Minister by the end of this week. That's not quite how it works, because there would have to be a vote of confidence in Boris Johnson's leadership among Conservative MPs first. And I think that, on balance, I think that is likely to happen. I think it's very much poised on a knife edge, but I think there will be 54 MPs after Sue Gray reports. I don't think it matters particularly what she reports. We know the essence of it, and we know that the Prime Minister himself has admitted that work event, as he called it, in the garden of Number 10 shouldn't have gone ahead. He should have asked the civil servants to go inside. So he's admitted he made a mistake, but the Sue Gray report publication, whenever that is, and it keeps slipping, will be a moment of decision for Conservative MPs, and I think they will decide to get rid of their most successful leader in the recent past.
John, thank you very much. As always, John Rentoul, their chief political commentator for The Independent. Thank you for whizzing us through a couple of massive issues, really, there. I suppose there's the Islamophobia row, there's Partygate, Sue Gray, of course.
Yeah.
Sue Gray has got the perfect name for the person who's going to be writing this report. Yeah. It's Jackie Weaver vibes,
It's just very HR, isn't it? It's just the classic, typical HR name that you'd come up with.
It is,
Middle-aged HR lady.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, of course, all brilliant.
Yeah.
They are. No, they are. Thank you for giving me a job.
Let's go to some of your views. I'm sure you have a lot to say about what's going on, not least that mandatory jab for NHS, and the government have not confirmed that they'll be scrapping it, although there are calls from many to delay the actual rollout of that sacking, I suppose.
Well, yeah, dismissals. Yes, they need a HR lady, don't they? Right, loads of views on that. My wife and I had the vaccines and booster, but forcing people to get a vaccine is coercion. That's from William. This is obviously about the NHS staff.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting what Dr. Tony Hinton said when we spoke to him earlier. He said he's had 2 jabs, but he hasn't got the booster. He doesn't think he needs the booster. And he says a lot of people are in that same position. And that's the position I'm in as well. I had my 2 jabs because I was told that was going to be the way out of all of this. So I weighed up, the risks, I suppose. But in terms of this idea of having to get boosted as a young, relatively healthy woman, I mean, do I want to have this jab every few months? Yes, I've had COVID. No, I had COVID. I was off with COVID for a week or so. And so I just don't think I need constant boosters for the rest of my life.
No, well, because that's what it's going to be, isn't it? But hey, look, obviously, each to their own. Loads of you are, well, I'll tell you what, there's a bit of pushback to this, it's fair to say. Just trying to find this name now. So I hope that the NHS... there we go. It's Gregory. Thank you, Gregory. I hope that they go ahead with sacking the troublemaking snowflakes in the NHS so we don't have to listen to their threats of early retirement. I mean, that's a view.
But then again, I mean, if you sack tens of thousands of people, ultimately it is the public who are trying to use the NHS who will suffer, isn't it? I'm not sure it actually works out well for anybody.
Yeah, it doesn't really. And it is that thing, we cannot have it both ways, right? We either have an NHS in crisis, we have an NHS on its knees, we have a staff shortage, we have people dying in ambulances outside hospitals because there isn't enough staff inside to treat them and stuff, and then sack 80,000 of them. You can't. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Well, keep your views coming into us, gbviews@gbnews.uk, and after the break, civil servants fight to continue working from home. But are they good enough to be demanding this from their bosses? Us, the taxpayers. We're their bosses. But before
they work for us.
Exactly. I look at this morning's news first.
It is 10:31. Good morning. I'm Rosie Wright to get you up to date here in the GB News newsroom. The Prime Minister has asked the Cabinet to conduct an inquiry into allegations made by an MP that she lost her job because of her faith. Nusrat Ghani claims she was sacked as a junior minister because of concerns about her Muslimness. Ms Ghani's welcomed the investigation but stressed the inquiry must include all that was said in Downing Street and by the whip. The Prime Minister is braced for the publication of Sue Gray's report into allegations of Downing Street parties during lockdown. The findings of the investigation are expected to be released later this week. The Foreign Office says some British staff and dependents are being withdrawn from the embassy in Ukraine in response to the growing threat there from Russia. It comes after the US ordered the families of American staff at their embassy in Kiev to leave the country. Russia has currently amassed over 100,000 troops at its border with Ukraine, but denies it's planning an invasion. The Liverpool taxi bomber Ahmed al-Swiman's asylum claim was rejected 6 years before his attack. We found the details in newly obtained court documents that show the Iraqi-born also falsely claimed to be of Syrian heritage in his applications. He died when his homemade bomb detonated in a taxi outside Liverpool Women's Hospital last November. The retailer John Lewis says it wouldn't be right to cut the sick pay of staff members for COVID-related absences, regardless of their vaccination status. Well, the retailer Next has reduced its sick pay for unvaccinated staff. Morrisons and IKEA have introduced similar policies. The Alliance of British Drivers say changes to the highway code are dangerous and that there's a lack of a plan to notify road users. Cyclists are going to be encouraged to ride in the middle of the road, and drivers will have more responsibility to watch out for cyclists and pedestrians. Well, pending parliamentary approval, the new advice will come into effect this Saturday. You are up to date now here on GB News. We're on your TV, online and DAB Plus radio. After a short break, we'll be back to the point.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Good morning, everyone. It is 10:36. I'm Patrick Christys. She's Mercy Muroki, and we're here all the way through until midday. We've got loads for you this morning.
Yes, and let's start with Boris Johnson, who's said to be at war with civil servants over their reluctance to return to the office. The Prime Minister wants an end to the working from home culture at Whitehall that some blame for the disastrous Afghanistan evacuation last year. But senior officials are refusing the push, despite the working from home order being lifted, of course, as Plan B measures were eased.
Yes, well, an insider told the Daily Mail that some officials had bought houses in Cornwall and the Cotswolds, gambling that the work-from-home order would be permanent. I mean, that's a massive gamble, to be fair, isn't it? That's an absolutely massive gamble. Although I know someone who moved to Tel Aviv, right? Actually, genuinely.
To work from home in the UK.
To work from home in Israel, right? For a job in the UK. So, you know, and they've got away with it.
Yeah, you can. If it's all remote, why not?
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, right. So, in more serious matters, of course, people want to work from home forever. Now, Vicky Pryce is an economist and former joint head of the United Kingdom's Government Economic Service and Chief Economic Advisor at the Centre for Economics and Business Research. So I imagine you've got a very large business card, Vicky. But anyway, there we go. Welcome to the programme. What do you think about working from home?
What we found is that a very large number of people were able to do their work reasonably well. In fact, there are some indications that productivity increased during the period of the pandemic when people were working from home. There is, though, something to say before we talk about whether it makes sense for civil servants to go back or not, which is that it is people who've been doing jobs that can have tasks performed from home that have benefited from this, because a very large part of the population wasn't able to. So when we talk about returning to normality, we really are talking about a percentage of people whose incomes were reasonably large. So interestingly enough, the higher your wage, the more likely you were to be able to do tasks from home. And they're the ones that have benefited from it. And of course, they got used to it. And to a considerable extent, it makes business sense too, not to have big offices and reducing the properties one has, the costs get reduced. And for civil servants in particular, the extraordinary thing that's been happening over the last decade is that through austerity, quite a lot of the estate of government has been reduced. Loads of departments are now renting out their various floors to others. So there isn't enough space. So I think it's more showmanship, if you like, rather than understanding what reality is all about in terms of doing your work. And we want to move also civil servants back to places around the country for the levelling up approach that the government is pushing. Well, again, there aren't any offices for any of them to be doing that in many parts of the UK.
I'm in two minds about this because on one hand, I have a daughter, a young daughter, and I value home-work balance. And I suspect many other people with families do as well. But on the other hand, I completely understand what you're saying about this class divide, about the option to work from home. So how is the government supposed to strike that delicate balance? Because if Boris Johnson is saying, actually, you need to get back in the office, but also, we know, on the other hand, the government does want people to have a better work-life balance, surely. So it's an impossible balance to strike.
Of course, when we talk about the government, you need to think about the whole of the public sector. So the public sector, of course, consists of nurses and care workers who also, of course, have not been able to work from home. We're talking, about a relatively small percentage of people. Well, they're not necessarily going to be encouraging other businesses to do what they do, because businesses, we're looking at it from a completely sort of profit-oriented perspective. And what they have found is that their workers, who they want to keep, given that there is such a shortage right now, will vote with their feet. So we know from surveys that a large percentage of people who have been able to do more flexible work are going to leave their jobs and go and do something else, or at least they say they will, if they're forced to go back 5 days a week. So I think what we're seeing also is a change of mind of organizations. So Google, for example, had said they wanted everyone back by Christmas or after Christmas. Now, on January the 10th, they issued a statement, if I remember correctly, saying, no, we're rethinking this. You can carry on working from home. So I think it will vary from place to place, even in the banking sector.
It will, Vicky. It will. Sorry to interrupt, just a bit pressed for time. But I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if anyone wants to work from home, you should let them. Crack on, because I'll come into the office and I'm more likely to get a promotion because I see my boss face to face. It's like natural selection at the end of the day, this, isn't it?
That's a very interesting point. There is a concern that what we'll have with this hybrid situation is that many people will go back to work, let's say the traders in a bank, and
they deserve to crack on. Sorry to interrupt again, but they deserve to be the ones who kick on, right? They've come into the office, they've fronted up to it, they meet their boss face to face. You work from home if you want, but I'll be your boss next week.
Yes. So there is the worry that those who stay at home might, in fact, miss out on all this. And you're quite right. And they won't be seen, they won't be promoted. And yet you will be losing quite a lot of talent, because the people who do want to work from home are not necessarily just the ones that do routine jobs. They are also they hold a lot of the knowledge of a company. So I think there is that worry that we might end up with a sort of different categories of workers, and that would be pretty bad. And there will be an incentive, therefore, to go back to work. But the HR departments and organizations need to be able to work around this. That's why I think we might end up with a hybrid, so that you go in a few days a week and you work from home other days a week. But it will vary from what exactly it is that you do in an organization. You're quite right. We might see that distinction taking place, and what it will mean in the end in terms of people's willingness to then go back and just endure the commute. It depends on the way in which companies also react to people wanting to work from home.
Well, Vicky Price, thank you so much for joining
Thank
us.
you, Vicky.
We value your insight. I'm sure you'll join us again another time. Thank you. I think it's interesting what you say there about the work progression of people who come in. But then again, I do think people value work-life balance these days, don't they? And I don't want those people penalised either because they fancy having a few days working from home every week.
No, I don't think. I'm certainly not calling this to be penalised. I just think I would say it's probably quite natural that if you're in an office environment, you're coming in every day, your boss is in, and your chain of command, as it were, is in, and you see them day to day, right? I would have thought you'd be more likely to kick on. I don't think they'd actively, certainly in a HR sense, they couldn't actively discriminate against people who'd work from home. But I would have thought that if you're in the office, you're more likely
I
to
do
do
know
it,
what you mean, let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk. But now, the Conservative government promised in 2018 to outlaw gay conversion therapy in the UK. But some 30 Tory MPs are warning against the rush to outlaw the practice without debate, specifically in relation to transgender conversion therapy. In a letter to the Prime Minister, they say there's a deep concern that the proposed ban could criminalise legitimate therapies for those struggling with their sexuality and criminalise therapists helping children with gender dysphoria.
Well, Graham Nichols is a pastor, a church leader and director of Affinity Gospel Churches. Thank you very much for joining us. What's your take on this, then?
Well, I think it's really good that this letter has been written raising concerns. We've been raising concerns from the start about the broader question of whether such a law is even necessary. But if it is necessary, whether it sufficiently defines what it's trying to prevent, and to make sure that it doesn't end up preventing both religious freedom to be able to talk about things with people and to express our own faith, and within our faith communities to be able to talk about and to pray for people. And for people themselves to be able to express, I need help with this, I'm struggling with this, I'm trying to work through this. And so, we really welcome that, as a good thing to kind of stop and pause and think, what are we trying to achieve here? And is this law actually going to achieve it? Or is it going to actually stop good things happening when people chat about how they're feeling, particularly as children, how things are developing, and not authenticating what could be just a harmful process.
And why do you think it is so controversial? Because I suppose that it's the gay conversion therapy that's probably a bit more controversial than anything around the trans, because you can see a situation where a child speaks to a therapist, they're saying they have gender dysphoria, and a therapist tries to help them deal with that, and then they're criminalised because they're told they're trying to convert the child into a different gender. Why are we so poor at protecting children who are going through gender dysphoria? Because I think most people would say, hang on, you do have to have that conversation with them and say, are you sure this is what you want to do? Maybe they do have a disorder. Why are we so poor at protecting children?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think that gets to the heart of it, really, that there's been a kind of an ideology that if somebody, child or adult, expresses a feeling of their identity, that must be immediately authenticated and never questioned. And in the end, that becomes harmful to children who often go through phases to do with being confused about their own gender or sexual attraction and so on. And those things can change. Now, I'm not suggesting in any way that that we disauthenticate and suppress and use any horrible techniques to sort of change people's behaviour. But basically, this is a process of discovery in which therapists may be helpful, but also the church community may be helpful. And I think there's nothing wrong in the church expressing what the traditional teaching of the church has been and seeking to love people by talking through with them and praying with them. And I think it's not just therapy that's being suggested to be outlawed, but actually just normal church practice of saying, this is what the Bible teaches, this is how it connects with you, this is how we want to love you by trying to explain it.
In your experience, do most people who go to gay conversion therapy do it of their own volition, or is there family pressure?
Yes, it's a really hard question. I'm not sure I'm vastly experienced enough to know how much those things play, but I think you've got to kind of go back a step and say, if, say, a child is competent to get contraception or is competent to do a number of other things. I think to say that they're not competent to ask for therapy if they're confused and want to talk through it, I think that is unfair. And I think, in my experience, most people who've gone to therapy, in particular, are, it's quite a step to do that. So you've got to be quite motivated to do that. And I think genuinely wanting help with either talking through, discovering, or even just help with saying, I don't want to go down this road, and I need some help thinking about how I don't go down this road. And I think that's a completely legitimate thing to do.
Well, Graham Nichols, thank you so much for helping us unpick that. It's obviously a controversial issue and a bit of a landmine, so thank you for that. Is landmine the word I mean?
I think you were going for
minefield. That's the one. That's the one.
What is there? Is there anything as a landmine?
Mine. Yeah.
Landmines, is that what Diana did? She removed all the landmines?
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll never know. Right, moving on.
Yes, I think what I was going to say, actually, is I think it is a bit dodgy when gay conversion therapy is dodgy, let's be honest. My personal view is that your sexuality is your sexuality. When it comes to trans... I'm a bit more uncomfortable with people saying, oh, you can't talk to trans kids and help them try and sort of deal with their gender-based issues, their gender confusion.
Yeah. I mean, the fact is they're already being spoken to about it, right? They're already being spoken to about it at school now.
Well, the problem is that teachers blindly accept that what the children say they are.
So why shouldn't a therapist be allowed to talk to a child about it? Why shouldn't someone in the religious community be allowed to talk about it? You've got Sandra from the geography department telling your kids whether or not they might be born into the wrong body. I mean, it'd be nice if a professional did it.
Yes, indeed. Well, now, before a break, let's just quickly run you through some of the other stories you may have missed. A robot vacuum cleaner has gone on the run after slipping out of its travel... After slipping out of its travel lodge home. What? Yep, the Roomba failed to stop at the front door of the hotel in Cambridge on Thursday and was still at large the following day. Staff at the travel lodge announced the robot was on the loose on social media, saying it decided to make a run for it and could be anywhere, with well-wishers hoping the vacuum enjoyed its travels.
Is this real?
That's real.
Am I awake?
It was eventually found. It was eventually found under a shrub, with the hotel confirming the runway.
I like the fact, some people are like, one day robots are going to take over the world. No, it'll leave a travel lodge and hide in a bush. That's where we are, right? That's where it is.
Yeah, those Roombas are cool. They're, those weird robots. They're a bit creepy. But I've seen cats stand on them on YouTube, and then the cats use them as a sort of mode of transport in the home.
It doesn't bode too well for Travelodge's security, does it? That presumably the person on reception just watched a robot go past him or her and straight out the front door and into a bush. I mean, it doesn't, they'll let anyone in, I suppose. Anyway, right, moving on. The Duke of York was stripped of his title as Colonel of the Grenadier Guards earlier this month by the Queen, and now the Guards say they want the Duchess of Cambridge to take over.
Yes, if appointed, Kate could be the first female colonel in the regiment's 366-year history. A senior source told The Times this: "We all admire the way she has fitted in and behaved. She never seems to put a foot wrong. Everything she has taken on, she really commits to, and we want someone who will really engage with us." That's what they said. But I do find the language a bit dodgy.
Fitted in and behaved.
Fit in, behave.
Good
don't
woman.
Put a foot wrong.
She's fitted in. She's a good woman, a good strong woman.
Yeah, it's all a bit archaic, really, isn't it?
Well, it is. It is. But also, to be fair, she is great. She really is a bit of a saviour at the moment, isn't she? I think for the Royal
She just really conducts herself with class.
She's fitted in and behaved.
Yeah, she has fitted in and behaved, but she does. She's graceful. She's classy. She's very understated. She doesn't try and make a big deal out of everything she does. She just kind of goes about her business in a very understated way, and I think that's what a duchess should do.
I think she's exactly what people want. Right?
Yeah.
She is. She's really she's the Duchess that people want. The people's Duchess, I suppose. But anyway, there we go.
Indeed. Now, the average age of first home buyers has risen to above 30 in every region of the country, with a national average of 32, which is up from 29 a decade earlier.
Well, Halifax, the UK's biggest mortgage lender, easy for me to say, said the increase comes from the difficulty of raising a deposit, rising property prices, and, of course, changing lifestyle factors such as travel, higher education, etc. So the average house price last year, apparently, was £264,000, which is quite large, really, isn't it? I mean, I haven't got that kind of money.
Yeah, I never understood why you can't use your rent payments as sort of to build your credit, because I do find it odd how there's people I know who've been paying rent for over a decade. I mean, every month they're paying, I don't know, £800 to £1,000. They go to the bank and the bank suddenly is like, no, we can't trust you to pay a £500 mortgage every single month, even though you've been paying twice that in rent for the last 10 years. It doesn't make sense.
It's a bit rich as well, isn't it? Because for a very long time, I don't know if people remember things like, I don't know, the financial crash, where they were dishing out mortgages left, right, and centre to people who just go. So, all of a sudden you care about it. You now you're telling me that, despite the fact that
why
I can overtly and demonstrably pay my mortgage, that I can't be trusted to do it. I mean, come on.
Now, the last one, M&M's. They've announced a makeover for their characters to underscore the importance of self-expression. That's their quote, making them have more nuanced personalities and backgrounds.
It's an M&M. Anyway, the red M&M will tone down the bossiness. The orange M&M will acknowledge his anxiety, says the brand, and the green M&M has ditched the knee-high boots for sneakers, apparently, to embrace her everyday confidence, and the brown M&M now wears kitten heels, so her intelligence seems more apparent.
I don't know what to say about all of that, to be honest.
This planet. I mean, honestly, so what is it? The orange M&M's going to acknowledge his anxiety?
Yeah.
Well, how? He's an M&M. Oh, no. Well, someone might eat me. Yes, they are going to eat you, mate. You're right to be anxious, mate. You're going to get chewed up. You're right, you should be anxious. You should be. I'd be fucking anxious. Goodness me, any moment now, someone's going to put me in their mouth and destroy me. I'd be gutted. Anyway.
Yeah, I have no words to say about all of that. It's ridiculous, isn't it? But let's go to some of your views now.
Yes.
Let us know what you think about that. It's just all part of corporations trying to be more... Well, they're being woke, aren't they? They're trying to be more inclusive, I suppose, and that's what it's part of. But it's a bit silly.
Nobody cares.
They're M&Ms, for God's sake.
No one cares. That's the thing. There was no need. Thank you, M&M, for acknowledging your anxiety. Anyway, there we go. So, working from home issue now. People have been getting in touch. Alan's been in touch. So, believe it or not, some people have real jobs and are unable to work from home. Police officers, firemen.
That's us included. We can't work from home.
There's no way.
I suppose we could do it down the line over video link, but...
We could do. It's not the same, though. No. Not the same, is it? You don't get the same snap. Anyway, right, civil servants could even work for... Well, this is Janet saying that actually they should be allowed to work from home, to be fair. Yeah, perhaps MPs may work from home on their second or third job, so I think... Steve's being a bit candid there. Yeah, so a lot of people basically just... I mean, the overwhelming view is just get back to work if you're in the civil service, really. And I think we can understand that, can't we?
Yeah, we are paying their wages after all, aren't we?
They work for us.
The taxpayer. But keep all your thoughts coming into us on our email there on the screen, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Cram in a couple more, maybe?
Yeah, we've definitely got time for a couple of others. And we've got a lot of people getting in touch about the Sue Gray report. So obviously Sue Gray, as we were saying, the perfect name for a lady who's now going to be investigator. Yeah. Oh no, Sue Gray's about. So that's Jackie Weaver all over again.
It's the least threatening name you can possibly have, isn't it?
Yeah, until she sacks you. But Sue Gray, the Sue Gray report will not end the Boris attacks unless the verdict is guilty, as the media have already found him guilty. That's from Frank. I'm inclined to believe you, Frank. I think realistically, Boris Johnson's already been found guilty by a lot of the media, hasn't he?
Yes, but there are, of course, the MPs who will put those letters into the
he may also just be
committee, and then that will be what will be his undoing, I think. But let's now take you to the weather, and we'll be back in just a second.
Hello again. A fairly grey Monday for the vast majority, but not much rain around. Most places dry, as they will be for most of this week. Still feeling fairly cold, especially across England and Wales. We've had high pressure in control, slipping away a little to the east, and there is a weak weather front draped across northern Scotland. That will provide some rain and drizzle, chiefly over the Highlands today, and that'll continue on and off across the Western Isles as well. But elsewhere, it is largely dry. Some breaks in the cloud, northeast England, eastern Scotland, and maybe at times across Shetland. Could be a few showers here, though, but elsewhere it's generally dry and cloudy, and it does feel quite cold. 4 or 5 for most towns and cities across England and Wales. Highest temperature probably, if you see a bit of brightness across eastern Scotland, Aberdeenshire could get to 10 or maybe 11. Across to the west, though, there'll still be some drizzly conditions persisting into the evening over the Highlands and the Western Isles, but otherwise it's a dry night. Again, some breaks here and there, which could allow a few pockets of frost. And even when it's cloudy, actually, temperatures are likely to dip close to freezing. So a fairly cold, grey start to Tuesday, more granite skies for most places. A few breaks possible here and there. So again, northeast England, eastern Scotland, perhaps seeing a bit more in the way of sunshine. Any rain and drizzle petering out through the night across the far northwest, but then pepping up again through the afternoon. We'll see a bit more rain just trickling into the Highlands, the Northern Isles come tomorrow afternoon. Elsewhere, again, dry and cloudy and cold sums it up. Temperatures even lower, only 3 or 4 in some spots. That's going to feel pretty chilly. Again, eastern Scotland could see the highest temperatures. A little bit of rain could trickle in here during Tuesday evening, and same goes for the central belt. Maybe just a little bit of light rain and drizzle during tomorrow evening, but otherwise, again, most places staying dry. Not much rain around this week, certainly not across England and Wales. There will be wet and windy spells across the far north, and although there'll be some sunny spells, generally fairly cloudy.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Yes, good morning, everybody. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys and Mercy Muroki. We're here on your TV and on your radio, and we're all the way through until midday with loads on the menu today.
Yes, and get in touch with your views. We've been reading them out already over the last hour, and we will keep on reading them. GBVs at gbnews.uk, and we'll get to those very shortly. But first, let's give you the latest news.
Good morning, it's 11 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, here to get you up to date in the GB News newsroom. The Prime Minister has asked the Cabinet to conduct an inquiry into allegations made by an MP who lost her job because of her faith. Nusrat Ghani claims she was sacked as a junior minister because of concerns about her Muslimness. Ms Ghani's welcomed the investigation but stressed the inquiry must include all that was said in Downing Street and by the whip. Well, the Labour Party chair, Annalise Dodds, told GB News the government have to take her claims seriously.
We've seen Islamophobic hate crimes really disturbingly increasing substantially over recent months. We need a government that gets a grip on this, just as on everything else. And of course, this is a government in chaos that seems to be incapable of taking decisions.
The Prime Minister is braced for the publication of Sue Gray's report into allegations of Downing Street parties during lockdown. Well, the findings of the investigation are expected to be released this week. The Education Secretary, Nadhim Zahawi, says the findings will be completely open to the public and told us Boris Johnson has pledged to face scrutiny in Parliament.
He's human. He makes mistakes. He made a mistake on this issue, and he came to Parliament and actually said, sorry, but we've had the apology. We now need the detail, which is why the Sue Gray investigation is important. She will make her findings completely public, and that's the right thing. And the Prime Minister has then absolutely pledged to come to Parliament, make a statement, and be scrutinised on those findings.
Well, the Education Secretary also says he still supports the national insurance tax hike due to come in force in April. Well, it's after the Daily Mail reported that the entire cabinet would back a delay. Well, Nadhim Zahawi says the money from the 1.25% tax rise is needed to support Britain's social care system. Danny Boxall from the Taxpayers Alliance says, though, people are facing a double-edged sword coming out of the other end of COVID.
Going to have a sort of long-term impact of this, where growth is going to be slowed down. We're going to see less employment. People's wages are more likely to stagnate, which with a frozen income tax is going to be a sort of double whammy on people, facing quite a difficult time coming out of the pandemic as well. Not forgetting that a lot of people's incomes were squeezed then as well.
The UK High Court has ruled that Julian Assange can appeal against the decision to extradite him to the United States. The WikiLeaks founder is wanted in America over an alleged conspiracy following the publication of hundreds of thousands of leaked documents relating to Afghanistan and the Iraq wars. Now, the Foreign Office says some British staff and dependents are being withdrawn from the embassy in Ukraine in response to a growing threat from Russia. It comes after the US ordered the families of American staff at the US embassy to leave the country. Russia has over 100,000 troops at its border with Ukraine, but denies that it's planning an invasion. The Liverpool taxi bomber Ahmed al-Swiman's asylum claim was rejected 6 years before his attack. Well, newly obtained court documents show the Iraqi-born also falsely claimed to be of Syrian heritage in his applications. He died when his homemade bomb detonated in a taxi outside of Liverpool Women's Hospital last November. Activists today are planning a national day of action and protest against the expansion of HS2 to Manchester. Well, in a bill that's set to be approved in Parliament today, Phase 2B of the network will see travel times between Manchester and London cut by around 55 minutes. Stop HS2 North and HS2 Rebellion, though, want to raise awareness of the environmental and the financial impact of the rail line. A review in 2019 suggested the project would cost over £110 billion. New changes to the highway code that are due to come into effect at the end of this week are dangerous, some campaigners say. The updated advice includes things like encouraging cyclists to ride in the middle of the road, and it's going to give drivers more responsibility to watch out for cyclists and pedestrians. Well, the Alliance of British Drivers says there's a lack of a plan to notify road users of the changes. Well, pending parliamentary approval, the new advice will come into effect this Saturday. The retailer John Lewis has told staff they'll get full sick pay regardless of their COVID vaccination status. The executive director, Andrew Murphy, says the company casts no judgment and that it wouldn't be right to create a link between staff members' vaccine choice and the pay they receive. Other retailers, like Next, though, have reduced its sick pay for unvaccinated staff. Morrisons and IKEA have introduced similar policies. The French fashion designer Thierry Mugler has died aged 73. He was known for his daring designs featuring broad shoulders and plunging necklines in the 1980s. Well, the likes of Beyoncé, Lady Gaga and David Bowie all wore his clothes. In a statement on his official Facebook page, they confirmed that he died yesterday. You are up to date now here on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens across the day. Now let's return to the point.
Good morning. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Muroki on your TV and your radio until midday. So here's what's coming up.
Yes, the UK and the US will withdraw their diplomats' families from Ukraine as 100,000 Russian troops amass along the border. So is a Russian invasion imminent? Well, we'll discuss with our expert guest.
Yes, indeed. Now, the Black Bitch is a pub in West Lothian in Scotland, and it's coming under fire for its name, with some saying that it should go. We'll go live outside the pub with our Scotland reporter, Davy Donaldson.
Yes, and we've all heard about strict uniform policies. I'm sure many of you have experienced some skirt lengths, shoe rules, and of course hairstyles as well. Well, one school in St Albans has scrapped archaic policies to encourage their students to express themselves. That's what they're saying. Well, we'll be with our culture and social affairs editor to discuss this.
Yes, we have all of that coming up and much, much more across the programme. And, of course, you can get in touch, as loads of you have done already. Keep it coming, people. GBviews at gbnews.uk. But first, Mercy gives her views on the UK's broken asylum seeker system.
Now, it's been reported in the Times this morning that court documents obtained by the paper reveal that Liverpool suicide bomber Emad al-Swayalmin had his asylum claim rejected by a judge on several grounds almost 7 years before he launched his attack. Al-Swayalmin, if you remember, got into a taxi on Remembrance Sunday of last year, strapped full of explosives, and ordered the driver to drop him off at the Liverpool Women's Hospital, which was his suspected target. However, somewhere between a sheer stroke of luck and divine intervention meant the bomb detonated just outside the hospital, killing nobody but Swayalmin himself. The taxi driver managed to escape just seconds before the car blew up. The Times claims that Swayalmin was found to have told several lies to stay in Britain, including lying about where he was from, his family background, the risk he faced if he returned home. On top of this, Swayalmin converted from Islam to Christianity in a suspected bid to have his asylum claim looked more favourably upon. Now, this poses a whole host of questions around our, quite frankly, inept immigration system. If we can't deport people who've been proven to be lying about who they are and why they're in the country, what on earth is the point of an asylum process? According to the government's own figures in a policy statement published last month, as of 2020, around 42,000 failed asylum seekers are still living in the UK despite having their asylum claims refused. The number of enforced returns has also been falling year on year over the past decade or so. And to make it worse, 10,000 foreign national offenders have been released back into the community because they apparently cannot be returned to their country of origin. And that's according to the government's own figures. The longer the Home Office and our judicial system keeps failing to enforce the law of the land and deport people who are obvious red flags, like Swayalmin, I think the less kindly people might look on immigrants in general. And this impacts on immigrants like me, my family, millions of other families who are law-abiding, who pay our taxes, who make positive contributions to the country. The government's failure on immigration is a ticking time bomb, and I don't want to be around when it all blows up.
Yeah, we're there for the taking, aren't we?
Yeah.
As a country, we're absolutely there for the taking. You can game the system so easily to the point where it's... I mean, actually, in fact, well, sorry, but there are institutions in this country who are complicit in it. I mean, the Church of England was basically running...
But the thing is, you can't. If somebody wants to, we have freedom of expression, freedom of religion. Those are partly the reasons why people are coming to Britain in the first place, because we're such a free and open country. But
not if you read The Guardian, we're a country full of horrible little racists.
But I just think it's so difficult. You're referring to specifically people converting to Islam, from Islam to Christianity, to have their asylum claims look more favourably upon, and they say, well, if you deport me, I'll be persecuted because I'm a Christian. Exactly. Well, you can't stop people changing religion, really, can you? So there are lots of sort of issues where you can't actually do much, to be honest. But in cases that seem clear-cut to me, where somebody's been found to be lying several times on an application status, they've lied about where they're from, they've lied about Swayalmin was found to be from Iraq, I believe. He said he was Syrian. Multiple times, and even people who've had their asylum claims rejected, you can't deport. What's the point?
Well, I don't understand what on earth is going on. As far as I'm aware, and I've looked into this, we haven't sent one single person who's arrived here on a boat across the channel back anywhere, right? And that's it. And then you've got these people as well, 7 years or however long it was, where their asylum claim is rejected, they can just carry on living here. Isn't it amazing that if you want to go on holiday now or you want to get back into the UK after a holiday, you've got to print off however many COVID forms, you've got to do all these tests. You're a one wrong barcode away from being trapped somewhere like Mallorca.
Yeah, I mean, what worries me as well, that 10,000 figure for the foreign national offenders who've been released back into the community because they can't... I mean, what the hell?
It's just nuts. And it's totally self-defeating as well.
Yeah,
I don't understand who the people are that we're deporting. But also, as well, we did a story earlier on about the amount of Albanian criminals that we have in this country and are currently in prison. And the amount of them that we've deported like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, that's
true. And they just come back in.
That's true, that's true.
Yeah, oh
well.
Here we go. Here to add to Mercy's views is David Lowe, a retired police officer and a senior research fellow at Leeds Beckett University Law School. Thank you very much. Of course, he specialises in terrorism. I mean, look, this is surely a bad thing for this country, isn't it? We've got people hanging around here 7 years or so after their asylum claims rejected, just building up hate for this nation.
Yeah, I think Mercy was making it clear in her monologue that, just looking at the case of Al Swilmeen, quite clearly, certainly on the second application, he was lying about the condition that he was in. He was not really a political asylum seeker, and we have to get that balance right because, we are a country that should welcome those who need political asylum because they're in danger of their own life or suffering torture. But here's the other anomaly. I think it's time for the Home Office, or the Home Secretary in particular, to start addressing this through legislation and policy, those who are declined, that they are returned. And, as yourself, Patrick, and Mercy were saying there, we have this situation where we've got thousands of failed asylum seekers still in the UK. So I think we have to, or certainly the Home Secretary must start looking at dealing with this as a priority.
And can you just explain to us why? The question is why? How are they not being deported? Why is the reason? Because, as we mentioned there, 42,000 as of 2020, failed asylum seekers still in the country. So those are people the government have said, actually, you don't have a legitimate claim, asylum claim, and therefore you can't be in this country. So what's the hang-up? What are we waiting for?
I think the problem, Mercy, is the fact that we have this strange situation where it's then voluntary for them to return back to their own home state. And I think if you're here and you're trying to claim asylum, I think that's highly unlikely that you want to volunteer to go back to your home state. This is where I'm saying it has to be made mandatory that if your claim for asylum has failed, then you will be returned back to your home state. Even for those who are trying to claim political asylum, I differentiate because you've got those who are economic migrants. That's a completely different situation. I think the focus should be certainly on those seeking political asylum because that's quite a serious issue. And we should genuinely help those who are in that situation, as I said, where if they remained in their home state, there's a threat to their life or to torture or even to their immediate family. And we must help them. But there seem to be people who are sort of, if you like, playing the system just to try and stay here in the UK.
Yeah, playing the system as well. But there's a... Well, I don't know whether or not it is a misconception. I'm hoping you can tell me. Are lawyers making a lot of money out of this? Is it in a lot of lawyers' incentives to drag out appeal processes, to do this, that and the other? Are they actually are they coining it in off the back of this?
Well, I suppose I have to be careful, and certainly with being at the law school, associating with a lot of lawyers. I think what it is.
So yeah,
we have. We were saying about rights before. We have our right to freedom of expression and our towards religion, Article 9 of the European Convention on Human Rights. But we also have the right to fair trial. So we're looking at that system, and I don't think so much lawyers exploiting it. If someone is declined, then someone has.
No,
I
don't think. Let me rephrase that. I don't think for a single second. Well, I'm not saying that lawyers are exploiting it or doing anything wrong. I'm just saying, are they making lots of money out of it?
Well, I suppose they can do, and of course, the only thing is you'd be looking at asylum seekers to pay for that. Of course, it's legal aid, so it's the state who's paying for it. There's the other situation.
Yeah, absolutely, that's it. And I mean, the true cost of this stuff, presumably, is eye-watering. I mean, we seem to give legal aid to pretty much everyone. We gave legal aid to some of the Rochdale grooming gang members, for example, and that's still happening, by the way. We can't deport them either, apparently. So, you know, is it actually quite difficult to get deported from Britain?
Well, yeah, well, it does seem to be. As I said earlier, Patrick, you know, they're going to have to change the legislation and make it so it's compulsory. Once you've gone through the process of your application's failed, your appeal has then failed, then you must be returned. You can't make it voluntary because they're here voluntarily anyway. They've come here. So we have to do something to make sure, because Mercy made a very good point. You know, I mean, I'm speaking to you from Liverpool. I know I work at Leeds Beckett and I'm working at home now, but it was literally down the road for me when this happened. So, you know, there is a threat to our security if we don't deal with this responsibly.
Absolutely. Look, thank you very much for your insight, for your wisdom, really, I suppose, David. It's great to have you on the show. And good luck to you going forward. We'll have to get you back on very, very soon, won't we? David Lowe there of Leeds Beckett University, a lawyer and an expert in terrorism as well.
Yes, indeed. Well, keep getting in touch with your views, gbviews@gbnews.uk. But after the break, a school in St Albans is allowing its students to ditch strict hair rules in favour of self-expression, Patrick. Well, will other schools do the same? And should they? Well, let us know. We'll be right back.
Hello again. A fairly grey Monday for the vast majority, but not much rain around. Most places dry as they will be for most of this week. Still feeling fairly cold, especially across England and Wales. We've had high pressure in control, slipping away a little to the east, and there is a weak weather front draped across northern Scotland that will provide some rain and drizzle, chiefly over the Highlands today, and that'll continue on and off across the Western Isles as well. But elsewhere, it is largely dry. Some breaks in the cloud, northeast England, eastern Scotland, and maybe at times across Shetland. Could be a few showers here, though, but elsewhere it's generally dry and cloudy, and it does feel quite cold. 4 or 5 for most towns and cities across England and Wales. Highest temperature probably, if you see a bit of brightness across eastern Scotland, Aberdeenshire could get to 10 or maybe 11. Across to the west, though, there'll still be some drizzly conditions persisting into the evening over the Highlands and the Western Isles, but otherwise it's a dry night. Again, some breaks here and there, which could allow a few pockets of frost. And even when it's cloudy, actually, temperatures are likely to dip close to freezing. So a fairly cold, grey start to Tuesday, more granite skies for most places. A few breaks possible here and there. So again, northeast England, eastern Scotland, perhaps seeing a bit more in the way of sunshine. Any rain and drizzle petering out through the night across the far northwest, but then pepping up again through the afternoon. We'll see a bit more rain just trickling into the Highlands, the Northern Isles, come tomorrow afternoon. Elsewhere, again, dry and cloudy and cold sums it up. Temperatures even lower, only 3 or 4 in some spots. That's going to feel pretty chilly. Again, eastern Scotland could see the highest temperatures. A little bit of rain could trickle in here during Tuesday evening, and same goes for the central belt. Maybe just a little bit of light rain and drizzle during tomorrow evening, but otherwise, again, most places staying dry. Not much rain around this week, certainly not across England and Wales. There will be wet and windy spells across the far north, and although there'll be some sunny spells, generally fairly cloudy.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
And Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join me, Mark White, here on GB News. For more than 2 decades, I've been at the sharp end of reporting crime and security at home and abroad. From the scourge of terrorism to the fight against violent crime and the deepening small boats crisis in the Channel, they're issues you rightly care about, and so do I. As GB News Home and Security Editor, my focus will be on the stories that matter to you.
Good morning, it's 11:22 and this is To The Point with me, Mercy Muroki, and Patrick Christys on GB News on your TV and radio.
Yes, indeed. Now, a school in St Albans has scrapped the madness of discriminatory and archaic hair policies to encourage its students to express themselves and indeed their culture. So the all-boys Verulam school, apparently, used to send pupils home for hair that was extreme in style, colour or length. But now, long hair, cornrows and man buns are all acceptable. But can I just say a man bun is never acceptable?
Never, never. And while the school has also scrapped ties and blazers in their uniforms, as well as the policy for business attire in sixth form, head teacher Julie Richardson said this will allow students to be themselves and choose to wear cultural and religious dress, such as the Middle Eastern ankle-length robe.
I don't know what you're trying to say.
I don't know. She said if businessmen in the city are no longer wearing suits and ties, why then should teenagers? While GB News' culture and social affairs editor.
Well, then loads of people aren't going into work, so why should children turn up for school? If that's your logic.
Yeah, most people, I feel, yeah.
Anyway, sorry, carry on.
Tangential. Our GB News' culture and social affairs editor, Inaya Falawat Iman, joins us to discuss this. When I first heard this story, I didn't realise, actually, it was a boys' school. So I thought, oh, well, yeah, sure, long hair for girls and all, you know, different coloured hair, perhaps. But now I'm thinking, man buns? Actually, I'm quite against having man buns in school suddenly.
I think this is counter to what is equality. I mean, that the head teacher has justified this on the ground that this could be potentially harmful to students of colour and that it's allowing them to express themselves. But actually, you know, schools, kids come from all different economic and social backgrounds, and actually oftentimes uniform is the way in which there is a level playing field, that you're not having competition over your hairstyles, you're not having competition over your clothes and your shoes, that all kids are essentially the same. And I actually think it fosters a sense of shared community and shared cultural identity within the school. And actually, I think things like this actually erode that.
I agree completely. We used to have our own clothes day at my school.
That was a special day.
Mufti day. There you go. And I'll never forget this. There was a lad at school who, until Own Clothes Day, was deemed, you know, completely normal, relatively popular, turned up on Own Clothes Day wearing a bit of a ridiculous outfit and got mercilessly bullied for the next 4 years of his life, right, as a result of it. Whereas if you just stick to uniform and you have some kind of uniform structure, it's a leveller, isn't it?
Yeah, but even this idea that, you know, kids expressing themselves, to me, that's not the purpose of school. And I think that we're seeing the decentering of actually the transmission of knowledge from one generation to another. You know, history, science, maths as the pinnacle of what education is actually meant to be about in order to prepare young people for life in the outside world with the knowledge and skills. And things like, you know, expressing oneself and finding oneself, that's not necessarily the purpose of school. I think outside of school you do that. You go to parties, you meet your friends. School is not necessarily the place where you experiment with fashion and styles. It's for education.
Do you think there is a line to be drawn, however, between styles and ways of looking, ways of expression that might be out of choice and ways of expressing yourself that might be to do with your culture or religion at school?
I don't necessarily think that that is the appropriate place to do that. I don't see why that is necessary. I think we are in the UK, and again, there's a shared kind of British identity and British norms and heritage. And I think actually it is good for kids to necessarily leave the specificities of their family life behind. And when they go into school, they enter into a common community where there's discipline, structure and order within the school setting. So I think that I don't necessarily support this idea. And I do worry that actually many of the trends in education is going towards a child-centred approach. Rather than actually a discipline centre.
Yeah, and then I'm not being funny, but, you know, I'm generalising a bit here, but I think that then breeds the kind of person that is very self-entitled. You know, the kind of person who expects, you know, life isn't always like this. Not everyone in the professional world, people don't just bow down in front of you. There are rules, and that's the way it should be. Whereas, I think we're creating a generation of people. We may have already created a generation of people who expect everything to be their way. You know.
Well, I think that's a really good point, because when we see these, you know, students in university campuses protesting, and people say, oh, you know, why are these students hypersensitive? Why are they thinking all of these things? They didn't get those ideas from themselves. Oftentimes it started much earlier in education, where they're being normalised into this idea that they can get everything they want, everything's kind of hyper-regulated, hyper-managed, they're sensitive and vulnerable and all of these kinds of ideas. And by the time they get into adulthood, those are the expectations and norms that they take with them. And oftentimes kids that go to then university, then go into the media, cultural and technological establishment, then shape the norms of wider society. And I think that we are cultivating a generation that doesn't really have much respect for authority.
And later on, I do want to get your views on this, because it's something we'll be touching on later on. We'll be speaking about how some universities are mollycoddling students in terms of what they can access literature-wise. What do you make? Is this all part of the same phenomenon, basically? This is in relation to Northampton University basically censoring or putting a trigger warning on the book 1984. Is this just all part of that same phenomenon where we're treating students like they're babies, like we don't want to expose them to the real world, when actually, down the line, that's just going to make them, well, I don't know what word I can use that I can say at 9, 10, whatever the time is, 11:30, but yeah, weak.
Well, it is interesting. Sociologists have identified a phenomenon called the therapeutic turn. And this was over the last 30 years, where it increasingly became normalised, this idea that human beings are fundamentally vulnerable. We're fundamentally weak. And if you have those kinds of assumptions about human beings, what is the natural response? To cuddle them, to protect them, to censor life, to sanitise life away from risk-taking, and everything is safety first. And actually, that's really what we are seeing in all aspects of public life, from education to even, some people argue, the COVID-19 mitigation. It's always this idea of safetyism, and actually we must be protected from all risk, when in reality that can't be the case.
I do worry what would happen if we were ever, God forbid, to have to go to war again. You're looking at me like, what's she going to say?
I am, yeah.
If we ever had to go to war again, because sometimes I just think, you know, there were generations before us where you pretty much didn't have a choice. You go out and you fight for your country, and, you know, if you're a young, fit man, you know, there were kids, basically, going out and being put in these awful, horrible situations where completely out of their comfort zone in every way, shape or form. Sometimes I worry that if something like that was to happen, we'd be saying, oh, well, we don't want to hurt their feelings. You know, there'd be all these rules and things that would stop us from, you know, people going and fighting for their country.
Well, I think one of the big things that would stop people fighting for this country is the fact that I think there's a lot of young people in this country who just wouldn't.
Yeah, just on ideological. And that's the other thing. We might have an exception. Oh, I disapprove of Britain as a whole, so therefore I don't have to fight for Britain.
I mean,
would you fight for this country?
Well, I once heard a phrase.
I was joking.
I'll fight philosophically. I once heard a phrase that maybe we're suffering from peace, that because we've benefited from so much economic and social prosperity over the last few decades, that you know, we've kind of had to find new grievances, and we're not used to the actual real struggle and all of the things that come along with that. So maybe that's the case.
whole first world problems.
Yeah, maybe.
Really. Well, Inaya, really insightful. Always great to have you, Inaya Falarin Iman there. Who also has a
fighter.
Yes, indeed, and who has a programme as well on this very channel. Where can we find you?
3 to 4 p.m. every Sunday, the discussion. Tune in.
Thank
stuff.
Well, let's go to some of your views now.
Right, well, we have people in this country... This is John, thank you very much, John. We have people in this country on the breadline. We also have MPs claiming £30,000 of taxpayers' money for a house in London, etc., second homes. Just raising a question there about how much money MPs have.
Yeah, and there's also, don't forget, that MPs can claim for their gas and electric bills, their energy bills, on their second homes. Some MPs claim about around I think the highest was about £5,000 that they claimed. And I think it's a bit of a slap in the face, isn't it, to all the millions of people who will be struggling to pay their energy bills, whilst at the same time the taxpayer is effectively having to foot the bill for so many MPs for their second homes, who live outside of London, that is, for their second homes and their gas and electric. It doesn't sit well with me.
No, it adds to that notion of potentially them being a bit out of touch, doesn't it, really, with people? I don't think it's for the first time either, is it? Let's be honest. Someone's got, Tony here has got what he believes anyway is a potential solution to this asylum issue, which is, in case you are just joining us, you know, this Liverpool bomber was essentially refused asylum about 7 years before he ended up blowing himself up, basically. Just simple question, this is from Tony. How about ID cards? They might help a little. And it's a really divisive one, that, isn't it? Because a lot of people now, I think maybe the mood is changing slightly on ID cards, especially with what's going on the channel, for example. But, you know, it can be deemed anyway. It's a very authoritarian thing, can't it?
Yeah, but mainly by people on the left, I think they think it's much more authoritarian than it is.
It just cracked me up that, you know, the old, you know, should you have to show an ID to go and vote? And then everyone on the left, no, of course not. Well, what about voter fraud? Voter fraud, mate? No, there's no voter fraud. We don't like voter fraud. I'm just saying that you shouldn't need to prove who you are to vote.
I think it's very uncontroversial. Personally.
If you have to show an ID at a Wetherspoons, I just have to show one at a polling booth. Anyway.
Yes, indeed. Well, after the break, the latest on the Ukraine situation with former British diplomat Sir Tony Brenton. But before that, a look at this morning's news.
Good morning, it's 11:33. I'm Rosie Wright, here to get you up to date in the GB News newsroom. Now, the Prime Minister has asked the Cabinet to conduct an inquiry into allegations made by an MP that she lost her job because of her faith. Nusrat Ghani claims she was sacked as a junior minister because of concerns about her Muslimness. Ms Ghani's welcomed the investigation but stressed the inquiry must include all that was said in Downing Street and by the whip. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister is braced for the publication of Sue Gray's report into allegations of Downing Street parties during lockdown. Well, the findings of the investigation are expected to be released later on this week. The UK High Court has ruled Julian Assange can appeal against the decision to extradite him to the United States. The WikiLeaks founder is wanted in America over an alleged conspiracy following the publication of hundreds of thousands of leaked documents relating to the Afghanistan and the Iraq wars. Speaking outside the High Court, his partner says the decision is still a long way from justice. The Foreign Office says some British staff and their dependents are being withdrawn from the embassy in Ukraine in response to the growing threat there from Russia. Well, that's come after the US ordered the families of American staff at their embassy in Kiev to leave the country. Russia has currently amassed over 100,000 troops at its border with Ukraine, but denies it's planning an invasion. The Liverpool taxi bomber Ahmed al-Swiman's asylum claim was rejected 6 years before his attack. Newly obtained court documents showed the Iraqi-born also falsely claimed to be of Syrian heritage in his applications. He died when his homemade bomb detonated in a taxi outside Liverpool Women's Hospital last year. And the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss is meeting with European Commission Vice President Maroš Šefčovič to try to resolve the deadlock with the EU over the Northern Ireland Protocol. You are up to date now here on GB News. We're on your TV, online and DAB plus radio. After a short break, we'll be back to the point.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Yes, morning everybody. It is 11:37. This is To The Point. Patrick Christys here and Mercy Muroki on GB News, and we're live on your TV and your radio.
Yes, and now it's deadline day for the renaming of a pub in West Lothian by owners Green King. They want to change the name of the Black Bitch in Linlithgow, let's go with that, as they feel it has racist and offensive connotations. That's despite over 11,000 people signing a petition against it, while Davy Donaldson reports.
Protesters in full voice at the cross in Linlithgow as they try to save the historic name of their pub.
They're angry because this is part of local folklore. This is the legend of the town, and it's also the insinuation that the people of Linlithgow would put up with the name if it was either racist or offensive, which it is not. They need to do their research, Green King.
The Black Bitch has been an important symbol of the town of Linlithgow since the 13th century. This is a problem which has got nothing to do with racism. To the people of Linlithgow, the expression Black Bitch is synonymous with the town. It has nothing at all to do with black people or the troubles which black people have experienced in history. It's nothing more than the commemoration of a loyal black greyhound, a greyhound that wanted to save its master. Nothing more than that. So this is more than just an attack on the pub name, it's an attack on the town itself.
Green King have offered a variety of options, including the Black Hound, the Willow Tree, the Linlithgow Arms and the Weary Drover, all of which have been dismissed out of hand by locals who want to retain the town's history.
Green King think they can just walk over the history of Linlithgow, and although we've tried to explain to them several times that this is wrong, they're just ignoring us. Please, Green King, listen. That's all you need to do. We'll put a plaque up explaining the story. There is a plaque in the Black Bitch pub that explains the story. And it could be the story has been a bit embellished over the years, but it's a very old story. But it's our story. And it's on everything. It's on the coat of arms, it's on the lampposts, it's on various communities' logos, so it's everywhere. You cannot just walk in and say, this is offensive. You can't, because it's not. It's a female dog.
Green King have said their stance remains unchanged and have set a deadline for today for the renaming of the Black Bitch pub.
Interesting one there. Speaking as a black bit, no, I'm joking. I don't find this offensive, personally. I'm sorry. I don't find this offensive. I mean, sure, I am the person, surely, who this should, in theory, be offensive to. I'm just like, look, it's obviously named after this dog. We know what the name for the word for a female dog is, the English word for it. Yeah. That's obviously what it relates to. I mean, it's just a lot of faff, isn't it?
Yeah, but some of the people who started this movement, if you want to call it that, to get this name changed, right, weren't from the area. Yeah. So they were tourists who visited. Yeah. In fact, I'm not even sure it was that. There was someone who just saw the name of the pub. It was this lady who was admitted that she'd never even been to the area. So as a result of essentially just some woman getting offended for this, now we've got, here we are.
It is a bit ridiculous. Well, our Scotland reporter Davy Donaldson joins us now live from outside the pub. Davy, give us the situation, the state of play at the moment in terms of the likelihood of this name being actually changed by the end of today.
Well, the big problem is, of course, that Greene King can change the name any time they like. It's their pub, they can do what they like. They have put a number of options on the table, all, of course, which have been dismissed out of hand, as I said there, by the protesters, and rightly so, you'd have to say, because their argument is a very strong one. The pub has been here for hundreds of years. The name is synonymous with Linlithgow. It's the legend of a female dog which saved a master by bringing food to him on the island. He'd been banished to the island, and the dog helped by bringing food and saved his life. So you can understand the reluctance to change the name because it's part of the town's history, and they feel very, very strongly about that. You saw with the protest there on Saturday, and that's not the first protest. Remember, there have been a number of protests. There's a statue of the dog in town as well, halfway up the high street, but over my left shoulder. So, there is a strong sense of feeling here, and certainly they feel it's an attack by Greene King on their history, and feel it's an attack by Greene King, who they feel are deeming them racist, which is clearly not the case. It's not a racist town. They obviously want action to happen. They want to keep the name. Whether that's going to happen, I think, is probably highly unlikely. Today's D-Day. We'll find out later today exactly what's going to happen, but you'd have to say that, as I said before, that Greene King can change the pub name to whoever they want.
Davey, thank you very much. I mean, goodness me, it's a bit of a storm in a teacup, I would have thought, this, really. I mean, I don't see who... we've got bigger things on. We've got bigger things on than the renaming of this pub from people who don't even want it renamed, do they?
Yeah. Thank you, David. I think that it would, for me, there would be a bit of an issue if somebody started a pub today and randomly decided to call it that. I would be a bit like, well, what are you doing there? It's a bit odd. But given the history, you have to put everything into context, don't you? There's a long history of why it's called that name. It's called that name, obviously, because of the dog, and it is the English word for a female dog. So, as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing malicious about why it's called that at all, and people should just stop getting offended.
It's just a classic case, isn't it, of people getting offended on other people's behalf, really, isn't it? And there's no need for it. There's no need for it at all, anyway.
Now, something a bit more serious. The US and the UK have ordered the families of its embassy staff in Ukraine to leave the country as tensions between Russia and Kiev mount. An advisor from the State Department said there are reports Russia is planning significant military action against Ukraine. This comes as an estimated 100,000 Russian troops have moved to the border. Russia, though, has denied the claims that it's planning to invade. But can they be trusted? That's the question.
Well, former British ambassador to Russia, Sir Tony Brenton, joins us now. Thank you very much for taking the time to be on the show. Do you think Russia's going to invade?
No, I don't. I mean, he might. I don't think the line is very good, I'm afraid. He has certainly massed troops there, but I think the aim of massing troops is to get the West to talk. And the West is talking. There have been a lot of exchanges, culminating in a meeting between the Russian Foreign Minister and the Secretary of State on Friday, where the Americans are going to supply the Russians with detailed answers to their questions. My instinct is that they're looking for some sort of compromise between the Russian demands, which are impossible for the West, and what the West can accept.
What does Putin really want, do you think?
What he wants is an assurance that Ukraine, for quite a long time in the future, he says that for quite a long time in the future will not join NATO, and indeed that NATO itself will not expand over the foreseeable future, because Russians see NATO as a military threat. And the fact is that Ukraine is not going to join NATO for a couple of decades at least, because it's just not ready and because its external situation doesn't suit it. So while the West can't promise that Ukraine will never join NATO, it can, with no cost to itself at all, promise that Ukraine won't join NATO for a long time in the future.
And obviously, lots of countries have spoken about the sanctions that they would impose on Russia. I mean, given that the deep-rooted ideological reasons for why Russia might want to invade Ukraine, I mean, would economic sanctions, do they make much of a difference, especially given the scale of Russia and its influence on the global stage? Do economic sanctions really will they make much of a difference?
Well, I mean, we've had quite a lot of sanctions on Russia now for quite a long time, since 2014, and the Russians have just shrugged them off. There's been a cost, but let's put it this way. If an official in the Kremlin goes to President Putin and says to him, "Sir, the West are threatening us with economic sanctions. We should therefore take risks with our national security," Putin would send him off to count paperclips in Siberia for the rest of his career. Russia is a country that cares much more about security issues than about the welfare of its population. So, yes, the sanctions are a bit worrying for them. Yes, they would have real costs, but I think they're very unlikely to weigh decisively in their decision about what to do about Ukraine.
Are we witnessing a changing of the guard slightly in some senses? Now, Joe Biden, obviously, I don't think many people would regard him as being great, really. And then, as well, you've got China, obviously, the never-ending march towards world domination that seems to be happening in China. Russia is, I would imagine, is closer to China than it is to America, right? So, actually,
yes,
sanctions... So sanctions-wise, you know, realistically, does that bother Russia? You know, they cozy up to China and they're a real force, aren't they?
Well, as I've said, sanctions are not going to change Russia's mind in any case. But our general approach to Russia at the moment is undoubtedly pushing Russia into China's arms. And if you think about how the world is going, the world is visibly going in the direction of quite a major confrontation between China and the West. That, in a sense, is going to be the next Cold War. And the question that we in Europe have to ask ourselves is, whose side do we want Russia to be in this confrontation? At the moment, we're putting him onto China's side, where I can see some quite strong arguments for us trying to encourage Russia into a more neutral position.
Yeah, indeed. Are we now reaping what we've sowed, right? Russia, as far as I'm aware anyway, it's not quite as basic as this, but not far off, could just turn our gas off pretty much, couldn't they? That seems to have been a bit of a strategic error. It's actually one that Trump pointed out to Angela Merkel when he was in power. Are we in a bad place? We've outsourced basically loads of our manufacturing to China, for goodness sake. We've handed them Afghanistan on a silver platter. I mean, actually, are we in a bit of trouble here?
Well, no, let's not get too gloomy here. We are still the West, the richest, most powerful combination of nations in the world, and people treat us with caution and respect. With regard to gas, the last thing the Russians want to do is cut off the gas, because they need to be regarded as a reliable supplier by Europe. The Russians would dearly like closer relations with us than they currently have, but the political disagreements currently about Ukraine have made that very difficult. But there are ways for us to improve relations with Russia, talk to them, we talk down the current crisis, we then find common cause in dealing with Islamic fundamentalism, in dealing with cyber aggression and those sorts of things. And you begin to rebuild a relationship which actually could be quite positive on both sides, but at the moment is completely wrecked.
Good stuff. Well, look, former British ambassador to Russia, Sir Tony Brenton, thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show. Great to have your insight as well. We'll have to talk again very soon.
Yes, I'm trying to learn Russian.
I studied Russian at school.
Did you?
For a number of years.
What, as in the
GCS,
language or the history?
The language.
Okay. Well, show us. Show us the proof. Show us the receipt.
Patrick, moja familia Christys, ja żywu w Wrmslo. And it sounds like Russian, doesn't it? Right, now, let's run you through some of the stories that you may have missed. Go on.
Well, now, this one, we were speaking about this a bit earlier. Emirates cabin crew face the weight of weight criticism as former staff claim their body size was closely monitored by the airline. Former employees have described how some chubbier colleagues were enrolled into an appearance management programme in order to ensure they were putting on the glamorous Emirates face. Well, the weight police, the so-called weight police overseeing the programme, were issued punishments to the staff, such as pay cuts and potential job loss if they were not meeting the airline's strict dress size requirements.
Well, that's my dream shattered, isn't it? I'll never be an air hostess with Emirates. But anyway, some staff, of course, were given just 2 weeks to drop a dress size. This is nuts. 2 weeks to drop a dress size, and were checked again.
This doesn't sound very legal. Are we
doesn't,
sure
although I
this
suppose
happened?
Emirates.
These are allegations, I suppose, but I'm not sure it's very legal. We were speaking about whether it's right, it's ethical, shall we say, for bigger people who take up more room on the plane and are heavier, weighing the plane down.
Yeah.
Is it right that they should pay more?
Well, I think it's
just a question. I'm just posing in the question.
Look, I've got to be honest with you. You know, when I go to an airport, I mean, it's a thing of the past now, but when I used to go to an airport, you know, I'd get there and check your 23 kilos, kilograms, whatever you're allowed, you know. It'd weigh it in, and they go, "Oh, sorry, sir, you're a bit over." They slap a badge that says heavy on it, right? And they make me pay through the nose. Then behind me is a bloke who gets weighed at the zoo, right? And, you know, he has to get winched out of his own home, this guy. He's too fat to walk, right? And he gets, takes up 2 seats on the plane, which I don't think he's paying for. His weight allows... I mean, if he ate my suitcase, he could eat my suitcase.
Well, I think I should get a discount, personally.
For being wafer thin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's only fair, actually.
Yeah, well, potentially. Well, I mean, yeah. Also, clothes sizes as well. You know, I think there's more material.
I still think, I think look, I think I should get a discount for not using as much material as, say, you, for example. Just an example.
Moving on. Right, Australian children's performers, The Wiggles, have won the hottest track of 2021 in a radio competition for their cover of a song by rock band Tame Impala. But the Queensland police said investigations have commenced into the Wiggles' shock win.
Yes, an investigation into how they created such a banger has commenced for some strange reason. The children's band reunited with old and new members to cover the Tame Impala's Elephant for Triple J Radio's Like a Version cover segment, going on to win the hottest song in Australia by public vote. And here's a clip of the Wiggles recording their cover.
Wouldn't care too much if it just disappeared. Oh, look, see, there he is now coming down the stairs.
Fruit salad. Fruit salad. Yummy, yummy. Fruit salad. Yummy, yummy. Fruit salad.
That is my idea of torture.
Is that? Is that real? Goodness me. They won as well. Can you imagine what else must have been dished up? Just like 24 hours of white noise, you know?
Yeah, it's very bizarre. Anyway, that was, I suppose, a lighter
well done to Wiggles,
but can we finish with let's give you what we mentioned about earlier. Earlier we were talking about school uniform, weren't we? And we had Inaya Falarin Iman, and we mentioned this 1984 issue. The Northampton University is basically issuing a warning, a trigger warning for the George Orwell's novel 1984. Staff at the university don't seem to have got the message. They issued the warning on grounds that it contains explicit material, which is sort of the point. I mean, it's not explicit, it's a dystopian novel.
Well, it's
students...
It's a documentary now, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's reality. Offensive and upsetting, that's what they say that students are finding it.
Well, yeah, I mean, putting a trigger warning on 1984 is very 1984, isn't it, really? I mean,
they're kind of reinforcing the fact that we are living in 1984 world.
They might as well just cut to the chase and just say Orwell was right.
It's very bizarre. I just don't think you should mollycoddle grown-ups. I mean, by the time you're going to university, you're 18.
There should be a trigger warning on that Wiggles song.
And it's my hometown university as well. Embarrassment.
No, it is. No, I think it's a bit weird.
Let's finish with some of your views. Angie here says, when I was a kid, I grew up and learned to fit into society. How did it all turn around so that society fits into what kids want? This is in respect to uniforms and wearing what you like at school. Alan says, how can you send asylum seekers back who get refused asylum if you don't know where they came from? And perhaps that's some of the problem, that they can't quite identify where to send them back to, because they're not always truthful, are they, about where they're coming from?
Yeah. There's one here from Kim that I think is strong stuff, Kim. Shame the fat. If you own a business, you make the rules. So all of those, are you happy to leave the airline and do something else? just like the anti-vaxxers. That's from Kim. Kim's got some views.
That's strong, but it's
Strong stuff,
an
Kim.
option.
Yes, I'm not sure we should condone shaming the fat.
Another Kim also says here, boycott, and Kim actually and a few others have said that this pub, the Black Bitch, which they're calling for the name to be changed, some people are calling for the name to change, they're saying locals should boycott the pub and force Green King, who own the pub, to, not change the name.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I mean, Green King's a massive chain, right? Absolutely massive chain. So, I mean, I'm not sure how much it would bother them, but I suppose it might do. I don't know how many other pubs are in the area, of course, but yeah, it just seemed like, locals could vote with their feet, couldn't they?
Yeah. Indeed, well, that is it from us here at To The Point, but don't go away. Up next is The Briefing with Gloria De Piero. See you tomorrow.
Hello again. A fairly grey Monday for the vast majority, but not much rain around. Most places dry as they will be for most of this week. Still feeling fairly cold, especially across England and Wales. We've had high pressure in control, slipping away a little to the east, and there is a weak weather front draped across northern Scotland that will provide some rain and drizzle, chiefly over the Highlands today, and that'll continue on and off across the Western Isles as well. But elsewhere, it is largely dry. Some breaks in the cloud, northeast England, eastern Scotland.